But one question still remains. If the brain can become addicted to uncertainty, can it also become addicted to emotional pain itself? The answer is disturbing, because some people don't just chase love, they unknowingly chase suffering. And that's exactly what we'll uncover in episode 10. The calm ones? Or the moments when they finally replied after making you wait? When they finally showed affection? After days of emotional distance? When they finally chose you? After making you question yourself? Those moments felt incredible. Not because they were healthy, because your brain had been deprived. Relief can feel exactly like love to an exhausted nervous system. Read that again. Relief can feel exactly like love. That single misunderstanding has kept millions of people trapped. They keep chasing, not because the relationship was extraordinary, but because the uncertainty was chemically addictive. The tragedy is that they call this true love. It isn't. True love creates peace. Addiction creates obsession. True love expands your identity. Addiction slowly replaces it. True love gives you freedom. Addiction makes you monitor every notification. One helps you breathe. The other teaches you to survive on emotional crumbs. Imagine feeding a starving traveler one bite of bread every 3 days. That traveler won't love the bread. He'll become desperate for the next bite. Many relationships work exactly like that. Small emotional rewards, given at unpredictable times. Enough hope to stop you leaving. Enough uncertainty to stop you feeling secure. Eventually, you stop asking, is this relationship healthy? You begin asking, how do I get another moment like yesterday? That is not connection. That is conditioning. And conditioning can feel stronger than love. Now think back to the beginning of this series. Episode after episode, we explored identity, validation, attachment, scarcity, approval, chasing. Each one looked like a different problem, but they were all symptoms of the same hidden wound, a belief that your worth must be activated by someone else. The day you stop believing that, everything changes. Because now, you no longer chase attention. You create a life that naturally attracts it. You no longer beg for certainty. You become certain of yourself. You no longer ask, why did they leave? What part of me believed I would disappear if they did? That question will change your future more than any relationship advice ever could. And here is the final truth. You were never searching for another person. You were searching for permission to feel complete. But permission was never theirs to give. It was always yours. The moment you stop outsourcing your identity, the chase ends. Not because people suddenly change. Because you do. You stop running after what keeps moving away. You start becoming someone who no longer needs to. And that is where identity collapse ends and identity rebirth begins. Take a deep breath, because what you're about to hear may completely change the way you remember your past. For months, maybe even years, you believed one sentence. I can't stop thinking about them. But what if that sentence was never true? If you were never addicted to the person? If you became addicted to the emotional lottery they created inside your brain? Think about a casino. Nobody becomes addicted because they win every time. They become addicted because they win just enough to keep hoping. One small reward, then silence. One beautiful night, then emotional distance. One unexpected compliment, then days of confusion. One message that makes your heart race, then complete disappearance. Your brain begins asking only one question. When will the next reward come? This pattern has a name: intermittent reinforcement. It is one of the most powerful learning mechanisms ever discovered in behavioral psychology. The brain does not chase predictable rewards. It chases unpredictable rewards, because unpredictability creates anticipation, and anticipation releases dopamine. Here is the mistake almost everyone makes. They think dopamine is the chemical of pleasure. It isn't. Dopamine is the chemical of pursuit, of expectation, of maybe. Every time your phone lights up, your brain whispers, maybe it's them. Every time it isn't, the loop stays open. Every time it is, the loop becomes even stronger. You are no longer responding to a person. You are responding to a reward schedule. That is why some people stay emotionally trapped long after the relationship has ended. Not because love survived, because the reward loop did. Now ask yourself something. Were your happiest moments? But something even darker still remains. If chasing destroys attraction, and approval destroys identity, then why does the brain keep repeating the same mistake? Again and again. The answer isn't emotional. It's biological. Your brain became addicted, not to the person, but to the chemical reward of almost being chosen. And once you understand that addiction, you'll never confuse obsession with love again. Think about an actor. He can play a character for 3 hours. But imagine if he had to stay in character every second of every day. Eventually, he wouldn't know where the role ends and where he begins. That's exactly what approval addiction does. It blurs identity until your real personality becomes unfamiliar, even to you. This is why rejection hurts so much. You're not only losing a relationship, you're losing the role you spent months creating, the role that gave you purpose, the role that made you feel valuable, the role that convinced you, if I do everything right, they'll stay. But here's the truth. No performance can create permanent love, because performance always creates pressure, and pressure eventually collapses. There's another layer almost nobody talks about. Human beings unconsciously test reality, not through questions, through resistance. Sometimes people disagree, just to discover whether you're real, whether you have limits, whether you have standards, whether your personality exists outside their approval. If every disagreement ends with, I'm sorry, if every conflict ends with, whatever you want, if every decision becomes, anything is fine, you don't appear loving. You appear absent, because your identity never enters the room. Respect is built when people experience your reality, not your performance, your calm, your standards, your ability to remain yourself, even when someone disapproves. That doesn't make you difficult. It makes you trustworthy, because authenticity is predictable. Performance is not. This is why many people say, I changed everything for them, and they still left. Exactly, because people cannot build lasting attraction to someone who abandoned themselves before the relationship even had a chance. Now let's go deeper. Imagine holding water in your hands. The tighter you squeeze, the faster it escapes. Relationships work the same way. Approval seeking is emotional squeezing. Control disguised as love. Fear disguised as effort. Attachment disguised as loyalty. The tighter you hold, the less remains. Maybe the reason they slowly stopped recognizing you is because you stopped recognizing yourself first. Read that again. Because this is the turning point. The day you stop asking, how do I become enough for them? And begin asking, what parts of myself have I abandoned just to avoid rejection? Everything changes. Not overnight, but permanently. Because from that moment, you're no longer rebuilding the relationship. You're rebuilding the person who entered it. The day you stopped being yourself. Before we go any further, I want you to remember someone. Not the person you were chasing. The person you were before you met them. There was a version of you who laughed without waiting for someone's reply. Who woke up thinking about dreams instead of notifications. Who made decisions without wondering whether someone would approve. That person wasn't perfect, but they were free. Now ask yourself something uncomfortable. When was the last time you made a decision that had absolutely nothing to do with another person's opinion? Not because they asked, not because they expected, not because you feared losing them, but because it was simply who you are. If you struggle to answer, you're not alone, because identity rarely disappears all at once. It disappears one small approval at a time. It starts innocently. You change your words. Because you don't want conflict. You change your clothes because they like a different style. You stop talking about certain dreams because they don't seem interested. You become quieter, softer, more available, more agreeable. Each change feels tiny, almost invisible, until one day you wake up and realize you have become extremely easy to love, but impossible to recognize. Here's something most people never notice. People are rarely attracted to perfection. They're attracted to authenticity. Authenticity creates mystery because authentic people are unpredictable, not emotionally unstable, just deeply real. They disagree. They have boundaries. They disappear into their passions. They don't shapeshift to keep every person comfortable, but approval seekers do. Approval seekers become emotional mirrors. They study people. They adapt. They adjust. They perform. Not because they're fake, because they're afraid. Afraid that if they reveal their true self, someone might leave. So they build a personality designed for acceptance. And then something tragic happens. People don't fall in love with who they really are. They fall in love with the performance. Now imagine carrying that performance for months, maybe years, always smiling, always available, always agreeable, always proving, always explaining, always fixing, always chasing. One day, you're exhausted, not because love is exhausting, because acting is. You stop expressing yourself. You begin managing outcomes. You stop enjoying conversations. You begin calculating them. Every sentence becomes strategic. Every message gets rewritten. Every pause feels dangerous. Without noticing, love transforms into emotional management. This is where psychological reactance begins. The other person doesn't consciously think, they are controlling me. Instead, their nervous system simply feels pressure. Pressure to reply. Pressure to reassure. Pressure to explain. Pressure to maintain your emotional stability. And human beings instinctively move away from pressure, not because they are cruel, because autonomy is a psychological need. The brain protects freedom, even when freedom costs connection. This is why someone can genuinely care about you and still begin pulling away. Not because your love became unattractive, because your fear became heavier than your presence. Now think back. How many times did you send one more message just to reduce your anxiety? How many times did you explain yourself, not because they asked, but because silence felt unbearable? How many times did you apologize, simply to stop the distance from growing? In those moments, you believed you were saving the relationship, but something else was happening beneath the surface. Every action whispered, I cannot emotionally survive your uncertainty. That message is rarely spoken, but it is deeply felt. The more someone believes they are responsible for regulating your emotions, the more emotionally trapped they begin to feel. And trapped people dream about escape, not because they hate the place, because they miss breathing freely. This is why chasing creates such a painful illusion. The more anxious you become, the more effort you invest. The more effort you invest, the more pressure they experience. The more pressure they experience, the less naturally they move toward you. Then your brain misinterprets their distance. You think, I need to try harder. But trying harder creates even more pressure. You enter a loop powered by fear. Every attempt to reduce anxiety actually increases it. This is the tragedy of emotional chasing. You are solving the wrong problem. The problem is not that they need more proof of your love. The problem is, you no longer believe you are enough. Without their response, read that again, because this changes everything. You stop chasing them the day you stop trusting yourself. The chase began inside your own identity, long before it appeared in your behavior. This is why two people can send the exact same message, but one feels attractive and the other feels desperate. The words are identical. The psychology behind them is completely different. Confidence says, I enjoy connecting with you. Fear says, I need you to calm my emotions. The sentence may look similar, but the nervous system never lies. People feel emotional energy long before they analyze words. That is why someone can say, "Everything is fine," while their presence quietly communicates panic. Your emotional state always arrives before your language. And this is where identity collapse becomes visible. Because when your identity is stable, rejection hurts, but it doesn't redefine you. When your identity depends on external validation, every delayed reply feels like evidence that something is wrong with you. Now your worth lives inside another person's phone, another person's schedule, another person's mood, another person's decision, and that is no longer love. It is outsourced identity. You are no longer protecting the relationship. You are protecting the version of yourself that only exists when they choose you. That realization is painful, but it is also freedom. Because once you understand that your nervous system is chasing certainty, not necessarily the person, you stop asking, "How do I make them stay?" And you begin asking, "Why does my peace disappear the moment someone becomes uncertain?" That question does not save relationships. It saves identities. The invisible force that pushes people away. There is something strange about the human mind. The more freedom we feel, the closer we naturally move. But the moment that freedom feels threatened, something ancient awakens inside us. It doesn't matter whether the threat is real or imagined. The brain reacts the same way. Psychologists call this psychological reactance. It is the invisible force that makes people resist the moment they feel controlled. Imagine walking through a beautiful garden. No fences, no warning signs. You enjoy every step. Now imagine someone suddenly tells you, you are not allowed to leave. Nothing about the garden changed. The flowers are still beautiful. The air still smells the same. But suddenly, you don't notice the beauty anymore. Your entire attention shifts toward the exit. Freedom has become more valuable than comfort. Relationships often follow the exact same pattern. At the beginning, nobody belongs to anyone. Both people choose each other freely. Every conversation feels voluntary. Every meeting feels exciting. Every message feels like a gift, not an obligation. Then slowly, without realizing it, fear enters the relationship. Fear of losing them. Fear of silence. Fear of distance. Fear of replacement. And fear quietly changes behavior. Because your attention appeared valuable. Anything valuable cannot be available all the time. Then something changed. Feelings grew. Attachment formed. And slowly, without noticing, you began reorganizing your entire life around one person. You checked your phone every 5 minutes. You answered instantly. You stayed awake just in case they texted. You canceled plans to remain available. You stopped protecting your own time. Every decision quietly revolved around them. From your perspective, this looked like love. From their unconscious perspective, something else happened. The mystery disappeared. Scarcity disappeared. Predictability replaced curiosity. And curiosity is one of the strongest emotional engines in human psychology. The brain is naturally drawn toward what it cannot fully predict. Not because uncertainty is healthy, but because uncertainty activates dopamine. Every delayed reply, every unexpected interaction, every unanswered question creates anticipation. Anticipation creates emotional investment. But once every response becomes guaranteed, the anticipation fades. Notice something important. This does not mean you should manipulate people. It does not mean ignoring messages to create fake value. That advice is shallow. The real lesson is much deeper. People are attracted to lives that already have gravity. A person with purpose naturally creates scarcity. Not because they are pretending to be busy, because they actually are building something meaningful. Their attention becomes valuable because it is invested carefully. Now compare that with someone whose entire emotional world depends on one person. Every notification controls their mood. Every silence creates anxiety. Every conversation determines their confidence. Who appears stronger? The answer is obvious. Strength is attractive. Dependence is exhausting. This is why chasing quietly lowers perceived value. Not because effort is unattractive, but because emotional dependence communicates, I have nowhere else to place my attention. And when someone senses that, the psychological balance changes. Not consciously, subconsciously. They stop feeling chosen because they start feeling responsible for your emotional stability. That responsibility creates pressure. Pressure rarely creates desire. Instead, it creates emotional distance. Then comes the tragic cycle. The more distance they create, the harder you chase. The harder you chase, the more pressure they feel. The more pressure they feel, the further they pull away. And suddenly, both people believe the relationship simply lost the spark. It didn't. The psychological dynamics changed. The attraction wasn't destroyed by love. It was suffocated by emotional overinvestment. Now ask yourself something difficult. Before you met them, who are you becoming? What goals excited you? What ambitions filled your mornings? What dreams kept you awake? Now compare that version to the version that exists today. If most of your mental energy is spent analyzing another person's behavior, then your identity is no longer expanding. It is shrinking, and that is the beginning of identity collapse. The psychology of scarcity, why people chase what feels out of reach. Imagine two identical books. One sits on a shelf, available to everyone. The other exists in only one copy. Before you even open them, your brain has already decided which one must be more valuable. Nothing changed about the books. Only availability changed. This psychological bias is called the scarcity effect, and it quietly controls far more than shopping. It shapes attraction, relationships, status, desire, and even the way people perceive you. This is where most people unknowingly destroy their own value. Not because they become less attractive, but because they become too available. Think carefully. When you first met them, you had your own routine, your own schedule, your own priorities. Sometimes you replied late because you were genuinely busy. Sometimes you disappeared for hours without thinking twice. Not because you wanted to play games, because your life already had direction. Ironically, that independence became attractive. But apologize when they did nothing wrong. Laugh when they feel hurt. Pretend they are okay, simply because they fear rejection. None of this happens suddenly. Identity doesn't collapse in one dramatic moment. It erodes quietly, like water wearing away stone. Every small compromise feels harmless, until one day, you look into your own life and realize you no longer recognize yourself. Now here's the paradox. The more invisible you become to yourself, the more invisible you become to them. Because confidence is attractive, not perfection. Presence is attractive, not performance. When someone feels that your happiness depends on their attention, the psychological balance changes. Scarcity disappears. Mystery disappears. Freedom disappears. And attraction slowly follows. This isn't cruelty. It's human psychology. People naturally value what appears internally complete, not what desperately seeks completion. That is why chasing often produces the exact opposite result. You think you're showing commitment, but your behavior communicates something entirely different. It quietly says, my emotional stability depends on your response. And dependency rarely creates attraction. It creates pressure. Pressure creates distance. Distance creates more chasing. And the cycle begins. This is not a dating problem. It is an identity problem. Because the real question isn't, why did they pull away? The real question is, why did you begin abandoning yourself just to keep someone who was already walking away? That question changes everything. The chase paradox. Most people believe attraction disappears because feelings change. That is rarely where the story begins. Attraction usually begins disappearing much earlier, the moment one person unconsciously shifts from sharing life to seeking approval. First, nothing seems different. You text because you care. You wait because you're patient. You compromise because you're mature. You forgive because you love deeply. From the outside, everything looks healthy. But deep inside, a psychological shift has already started. You are no longer expressing yourself. You are managing their reactions. That single shift changes everything. Your emotional center quietly moves from your own identity into their hands. Now every reply matters. Every delay feels meaningful. Every seen notification feels personal. Every short message becomes a mystery to solve. Without realizing it, you have stopped living your own emotional life. You have started orbiting theirs. And here is the dangerous part. The more your emotions begin revolving around someone else, the less stable your own identity becomes. Psychologists call this self-abandonment. Not because you stopped loving yourself overnight, but little by little, your emotional decisions stopped serving you and started serving the possibility of keeping someone else. Think about it. How many times have people ignored their own needs just to avoid losing someone? They cancel plans, hide opinions, accept disrespect, stay silent. You think love means trying harder, calling more, texting more, explaining more, waiting longer, fighting harder. But what if every extra step you take quietly lowers your value in their mind? What if attraction doesn't disappear because you cared? It disappears because you abandoned yourself while caring. Today, we're not talking about dating advice. We're exposing one of the most dangerous psychological traps. The chase paradox. The harder you chase someone, the faster they emotionally walk away. And once you understand why, you'll never beg for someone's attention again.